A bustling, upscale restaurant hums with energy, the chatter of affluent diners filling the air. Laughter bounces off the gleaming floors, blending with the clinking of fine wine glasses and the soft murmurs of luxury. In the midst of it all, a man in a sharply tailored suit leans back in his chair, projecting an aura of superiority. His laughter, sharp, mocking, pierces the room as it's aimed at a lone figure tucked away in a corner. This figure, a man dressed simply, blending into the background, seems almost invisible to the crowd. But little does the wealthy man know, the quiet stranger he's ridiculing isn't just another ordinary patron. What unfolds next will leave everyone astonished, proving that appearances can be deceiving and that humility can always outshine arrogance. The evening set against a backdrop of soft jazz, illuminated by the warm glow of dim lighting, saw the exclusive restaurant bustling with its usual elite clientele. At a corner table sat Keanu Reeves, dressed in a modest black hoodie and jeans, exuding an air of calm and quietude. He was savoring a simple meal, sipping water, and scrolling through his phone, his presence unnoticed by most of the patrons. However, one man's gaze lingered a bit too long. Across the room, a sharply dressed man named Richard leaned toward his group of well-groomed friends, a smirk playing on his lips. Pointing toward Keanu, he chuckled, just loud enough for others to hear. "Look at him," Richard said. "Who comes to a place like this dressed like that? Is this some kind of joke?" His friends, not eager to join in but unwilling to challenge him, chuckled nervously. Richard's loud voice carried through the air, drawing the attention of nearby tables. The soft buzz of conversation began to fade as people started glancing over at Keanu, who remained unfazed, still focused on his meal. Feeling emboldened by the attention, Richard leaned back in his chair and gestured theatrically toward Keanu. "Maybe he wandered in here by mistake," he sneered, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Should we chip in and buy him a proper suit?" More laughter erupted from his table as Richard's confidence grew. The waiter, attempting to steer the conversation back to their orders, was swiftly dismissed with a wave of Richard's hand. "I mean, really, what's someone like that doing in a place like this? It's almost insulting to the rest of us," Richard added, louder now, clearly enjoying the discomfort he was causing. Keanu glanced up briefly, his steady gaze meeting Richard's. He said nothing, his expression neutral, yet composed. The calmness of his reaction seemed to rile Richard even more. "Oh, don't mind me," Richard called out, loud enough for Keanu to hear. "I'm just wondering if you need a loan to pay for your meal." The room fell into an even deeper silence, the tension now palpable. Some patrons shifted uncomfortably, while others exchanged glances, silently wondering if anyone would step in. But Keanu remained calm, his composed demeanor unwavering in the face of the ridicule. It was then that a waitress approached Richard's table, clearly flustered. "Sir," she said gently, "I kindly ask that you lower your voice. We want all of our guests to feel comfortable." Richard scoffed, dismissing her request with a wave. "Oh, relax," he said. "I'm just having a little fun. If he can't handle a joke, maybe he shouldn't be here." Finally, Keanu spoke, his voice low but firm. "Everyone deserves to enjoy their meal in peace," he said, his words slicing through the air with precision. Richard laughed mockingly, clearly enjoying the power he felt in belittling the quiet man. "Oh, look," Richard sneered. "The man speaks. Tell me, then, what brings you to a place like this? Is this your big night out?" Keanu's expression remained unchanged, calm yet piercing. "I'm here for the same reason as everyone else, to enjoy a good meal. But it seems some people need to make others feel small in order to feel big themselves." The room seemed to shift as his words rippled through the space, stirring quiet murmurs among the patrons. Richard's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "And what makes you think you have the right to lecture me?" he sneered. "Do you even know who I am?" Keanu leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering. "I don't need to know who you are to recognize someone who's forgotten what respect looks like." The tension in the restaurant grew thick, the air heavy as the exchange continued. The manager, alerted by the rising disturbance, made his way toward Richard's table, the scene now on the brink of something unexpected. The tension in the room continued to escalate as the manager approached, her steps measured, yet betraying a hint of unease. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice steady, though the flicker of discomfort in her eyes was hard to miss. Richard, quick to defend himself, put on an air of innocence, his voice laced with feigned politeness. "No problem at all," he said, "just trying to enjoy my dinner. But perhaps you should set some standards for your patrons." The manager glanced back and forth between Richard and Keanu, her expression tightening as she processed the situation. Before she could respond, Keanu stood up, his movements smooth, yet commanding. "I'd like to settle my bill," he said calmly to the waitress, pulling his wallet from his pocket. As he handed her his card, the waitress hesitated. Her eyes widened slightly as she read the name on the card. She looked up at Keanu, her voice faltering. "Mr. Reeves." "I didn't realize." Keanu offered a small, reassuring smile. "It's okay," he replied quietly. "Thank you for your service." The waitress, now flustered, hurried away, but Richard couldn't resist sneering. "What's this?" he scoffed. "Did you just max out your card for that meal?" Keanu paused, letting the comment hang in the air before responding. He looked around the room, his gaze settling on the other patrons who had stayed silent throughout the exchange. Then, slowly, he turned back to Richard. His voice was calm, but his words held weight. "You might want to ask yourself," he said, "if the way you treat people is worth more than what's in your wallet." Richard's laughter faltered, the uncertainty creeping into his features as the room's tension grew thicker. As the waitress returned with Keanu's card, she seemed hesitant, almost trembling as she handed it back to him. "Mr. Reeves," she said softly, "your generosity is greatly appreciated." The room fell into an eerie silence as the realization hit. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd as people slowly connected the dots. Keanu Reeves wasn't just another diner. He was someone who commanded respect without ever needing to flaunt his wealth or status. Richard's face drained of color as understanding dawned on him. His arrogance crumbled, replaced by an overwhelming sense of embarrassment. Keanu gave him one last, knowing smile, a quiet, confident gesture, and without another word, he turned and walked out of the restaurant. The silence that followed was thick, as though the very air had changed. As Keanu disappeared from view, the patrons in the restaurant remained frozen in place, their gazes flicking toward Richard, who now sat motionless in his chair. The smug, confident smirk he had worn so proudly was gone, replaced by an unmistakable discomfort. He shifted in his seat, his face flushed with embarrassment, as if the weight of the judgment from everyone around him was pressing down on him. "What just happened?" whispered a woman to her companion. "That was Keanu Reeves, wasn't it?" Another man nodded, awe in his voice. "Yeah, the actor. The one who's always in the news for his kindness. I can't believe it. He didn't even try to defend himself." The realization spread rapidly through the room, like wildfire. Phones quietly appeared in patrons' hands as they searched for confirmation of what they'd just witnessed. Keanu's unassuming nature, his quiet intervention, and his refusal to escalate the situation now carried a profound weight. His actions resonated with everyone present, leaving a deep impression on those who had witnessed it. Meanwhile, Richard's friends exchanged uneasy glances. They had laughed along with him, feeding his ego, but now they couldn't have distanced themselves more from his behavior. One of them, a woman named Elise, cleared her throat, trying to break the heavy silence. "Richard," she said, her voice hesitant at first. "Maybe you went too far." Richard whipped his head toward her, defensive instinct flaring. "Oh, come on," he retorted. "Don't act like I'm the bad guy here. I didn't know who he was." "That's the point," Elise replied, her voice growing firmer. "You shouldn't treat anyone like that, whether they're famous or not." The table fell silent again, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Richard glanced around, realizing that not a single person at his table was willing to defend him. His earlier bravado had evaporated, leaving behind nothing but shame. The knowledge that everyone in the room had witnessed his behavior only deepened his discomfort. As the staff worked to restore order, The restaurant manager approached Richard's table. Her expression was a careful mix of professionalism and quiet disapproval. "Mr. Richard," she began, her tone polite but firm, "I'd like to remind you that our establishment values respect and courtesy toward all guests and staff." The room, still humming with the aftershocks of the moment, seemed to hold its breath as the manager's words lingered in the air.